Hi everyone, my name is Kira. I'm an English teacher, and in this video we are going to be doing a breakdown of a sample English essay from the composition section, and it is a debate and it's from 2013. So let's jump straight in. So we have the sample essay here on the left, and as I mentioned, it's the composition section, which is 100 marks, and this is the second section of paper 1. So this option for this year was a debate. So we're going to look at the question, we're going to break it down, see what area we need to focus on, and then structurally debate, in a debate structure is so important. So we're going to look at the introduction, we're going to look at the main body and the main arguments, and then the conclusion. So looking at the question then, the question is, write a speech in which you argue for or against the motion, we live in an unheroic age. So as always, I always say to mind the gap in your question. So it's really important to break that down. So the genre of the question, the genre of writing is a speech. So straight away you should be thinking about all the good things that you would usually do in a speech, all the different features, all the different elements that you would think of, and obviously things like structure and the different maybe features that you might have in your introduction and things that you might have in your conclusion, etc. So it's a speech. We want it to be a passionate speech. It's a debate. So we obviously want it to be persuasive. So that's really, really important. Now, the audience in this case isn't actually mentioned, so we don't know who we are, if this is a competition, who is listening to this debate. It's just a general debate. So we can decide how we might like to pitch the tone of the speech, or decide how we want it to be received. So, thinking about the kind of the language we're using and the tone we're using. But ultimately, it is a debate, so it has to be somewhat formal and well structured. Finally, then the purpose, well, it's a debate, so we can decide, are we going to argue for or we're going to argue against? Once you've picked one side, stick to it and make sure that, you stick with that throughout the essay, and that is your purpose. Your purpose is to convince your reader or to persuade them of your side of the argument. Okay, and then we'd have to ask ourselves, well, the statement is we live in an unheroic age. So I suppose, what does unheroic mean to you? Like, what does it mean to be a hero? Or what does it mean to not be a hero, to be an unhero or an anti-hero? Who are the heroes in our lives today and in society? So that might be a good way to start kind of brainstorming your speech a little bit. So introduction then, thinking about how we might get it started, a couple of main kind of features of a debate that we would usually see, and it is a good way to start. A good strong start would be the obvious greeting and making sure that you address your audience. So ladies and gentlemen, my name is, and what you're doing. So today I'm here to oppose the motion. So straight away the examiner knows you've taken a side to the argument, and that's where you're going with it, and that's what you're going to work on, convincing your audience. Secondly, then you want to set out your plan. So what exactly are you going to do? Well, you're going to talk about this, you're saying that you're opposing this motion, and obviously this student is just saying that this is a heroic age. So over the course of the next few moments, I will demonstrate to you why. So you're kind of previewing and telling your audience that I will now tell you my various reasons why I disagree with this statement. Finally, then addressing the question. So actually just breaking it apart, really, because remember, this student is opposing it. So this statement is a refutable, erroneous lie concocted by the pessimistic pushovers of our generation. Okay, so erroneous meaning that it's false, it's wrong. So pulling apart the argument and saying this is completely wrong, I 100% disagree with this, and here is how I'm going to, convince you of my side of this argument. So this student is looking at the main body, they're looking at structuring your ideas, and the main ideas that they've come up with are unsung heroes, so like examples of unsung heroes maybe in our community, and then technology and kind of how heroic or how impactful that has been as well. Remember, organize your points. Make sure to try to link from one point to the next. That keeps a good flow in your argument, and always keep the question in mind. So looking at unsung heroes, then a really nice way to start, because I think it was quite it makes it very relatable. It's very much talking about nurses, doctors, teachers, bus drivers, and people in your community. So it helps to kind of maybe engage your audience and get them thinking a little bit about the unsung heroes in their own lives. Addressing the audience throughout, so not just once but several times, and even throughout the rest of the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just a nice way of always making sure that you're engaging with them, that you're addressing them, that you're trying to involve them in what you're saying. Relevant examples. So obviously it's really good to bring in examples or even statistics, and numbers and things are always very useful in a speech, especially in a persuasive speech like a debate, but make sure they're relevant and make sure they're accurate as well. So there's a nice little example here. Last year during the bus strike and the blue flu, over 15,000 inimitable members of the workforce were unable to attend work, according to the Central Statistics Office. So a nice statistic there, and it is relevant, and it was because of the fact the bus strike was on it because they didn't have the transport. Now, rhetorical question is also a nice, very engaging feature to use. What happens when you take these eminent individuals out of the equation? Well, the answer is pandemonium. But really, in that sense, you're not really looking for an answer. You're looking to get the audience to think about what would it be like if these local heroes and people who help us every day were not there to help us. So again, it's getting people to think, getting them to reflect. It's a really nice feature there. So moving on from the sort of the local unsung heroes of the community, then this student goes on to talk about technology and how we live in an era where technology is prevalent in every aspect and it's an intrinsic part of our existence. So really it's kind of a hero in itself, and how it's heroic and all of the advances in technology have had such a huge and positive impact on our society. A nice kind of pop culture reference, as in to an author, Arthur C. Clarke, once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So likening technology to magic in what it can do and how incredible and unbelievable, I suppose, the things you can do with technology. It's like magic. So a nice little reference there. Rule of three is a really nice one for emphasis, really nice feature of persuasive writing. When you list things off in threes, it just rounds it off and it adds that extra oomph to your argument. So genetic engineering, renewable energy, and interplanetary existence are just some of the things that come to mind when we contemplate the future. So really nice use of rule of three there. And then we also have inclusive language as well, like we live in this era and we strive for new heights, and also our majestic species. So again, it's not just me and I and my species, it's I'm trying to include the audience, bring them along with my argument, and make sure that they kind of agree, that they agree and that they're involved in what I'm saying as well. Now, at this point, I would say more development is definitely needed. This is the second point that the student is given, but it's not particularly lengthy. And I would really, at this point, argue a third point or a third argument would be necessary, just to really hammer home this point and to really kind of like flesh it out a bit as well. We've only really looked at two main areas, one of sort of the local heroes and then the sort of heroic impact of technology. But, maybe a third point here would be better, and it would just really develop your argument and just really enhance the whole point of what you're trying to say. Otherwise, it's a little underdeveloped and a little bit short, I would say. So at this point then we'll move into the conclusion. Again, nicely structured. Again, addressing the audience. So a few times, ladies and gentlemen, just every so often bringing that in to make sure that you're showing that you're constantly aware of your audience, as well as trying to engage them and keep their interest. Linking back to the introduction. So in the introduction, this student decided to talk about a hero is not a noun, it's a verb. The idea that being a hero or being heroic it's more of an action rather than it being kind of one person. So it's more of a collective activity of the people in the community or technology, as we mentioned. So a nice little link back, and that always adds that sense that this was planned out, the structure is good, and the conclusion links back to the introduction. Really good for structure. That really helps with your coherence marks, showing that you've sequenced your ideas and that you kind of knew where you were going with it. But like I said, what would be lacking would be that there's maybe a third point in the main argument that was a little, really could have enhanced it that bit further. Final part of the conclusion then is a relevant quotation. So a nice little quote from John Campbell: "A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself." Again, I think I've said this before, but quotes are great and they can be really interesting, and especially if you can quote somebody who people are going to relate to or they know or they're familiar with. Make sure that is the case. Don't just randomly quote for no good reason. Here, this seems to work. It's a nice kind of almost like a definition of a hero according to John Campbell. So it's kind of a nice way of rounding off the speech. And at this point then, I think we come back to our sample, and like I said, structurally this is very good, and it's got everything you'd need. It's got some lovely features of persuasive writing, very convincing. However, the main body, the main argument is a little bit lacking, and I would say a third point in there would just really top this off and just really maximize those marks a little bit. So for the full annotated version and the PDF version, you can go to studyclix.ie.